Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me for another of my wonderful interviews, this time in the studio, which is fantastic because I have a very special guest. Now, you may have seen my guest today in the Lawful Remedy that we do, the live show. Of course, we've actually had a conversation over, I nearly said Skype then, but over Zoom in the past. It is Allegedly Dave. Hello, Allegedly Dave.
Hello, Richard. It's great to actually be in the studio.
It's lovely it is absolutely lovely to have you. And I love having people in the studio because you can have a nice bit of conversation beforehand. You can engage and you can sort of, I don't know, put the world to rights, get yourselves in the right sort of mood. It's very warm today.
Certainly is, yeah.
And it doesn't help being in the studio, although there are these evil LED lights that we're all told not to have.
If I go blind, you know.
Yeah, you know to sue. And the thing is, this man does know who and how to do all of that stuff. But we are, funnily enough, we're not going to be talking about the normal sort of lawful stuff that we often talk about on the Lawful Remedy and those sort of things that perhaps myriad of people know you for. And I know you've been working on lots of different talks and you go around the country giving these talks. Maybe just tell us, for those people who perhaps do not know who you are or have only seen you in one light, tell us perhaps just a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I kind of woke up at 9/11 because I was actually there. And
there?
Yeah, I was across the river watching
my
it.
goodness.
And I was nearly in it, actually, because...
that would wake you up.
Yeah, I turned down a job in Lehman Brothers on the 40th floor of Tower 1, like a month before. And I took a job across the water in a place called Hoboken. And literally when it happened, we all ran out onto the pier and were watching it just right in front of us.
Gosh.
So I saw it, and you know, it didn't have that much of an effect on me. I was back at work the next day and so on. But it was like 4 years down the line, I was helping my daughter with physics homework, and worked out that it couldn't have happened the way they said it did.
Right. Gosh.
So I thought I was the only one in the world who knew that there was something wrong with it. And then I found a whole group of people in quite little corners of the internet going, 9/11 was an inside job. So I joined that group, and I ended up bouncing between lots of different topics. So I started with 9/11, and then that led me to the New World Order, which led me to the legal monetary system, and then the legal system, and then the healthcare system, and so on and so on and so on. And I've been filling in this giant puzzle. And I started off 9/11. It just kept leading me to different areas, and I've been filling those parts in. And at this point, I feel like I can step back and see the big picture.
Yeah, I bet. Gosh, I didn't know you were actually there. That is, I mean, and you say it didn't overly affect you. I mean, these big buildings coming down, people leaping out of it, all those people dying.
Well, of course, it affected me in that way, just watching it. But you know, I was in the Bishopsgate bombing in London, so you know, I saw some real terrorism happening.
Right.
And again, I was at work the next day, so you have to, you know, as British, you have
Step
to
up a level.
yeah, so you shake it off and go back to work, don't you?
Yes, absolutely. We've just been blown up. Doesn't really matter. Sounds like one of those carry-on films.
It is.
Where they're all sitting there and
all the Americans were going, "Ah!" and I was like, well, pull yourself together, man, you know.
Absolutely, gosh. So as you say, you've now got this sort of overview look of the world and what's going on and things. And how did you get into doing the talks?
Well, I was very, very shy. I didn't really want to, you know, I never really wanted to stand out and stuff like that. But I had so much to say, even at the beginning of all this. Because when I started looking at the financial system, it's because I worked on Wall Street as a programmer. And I don't know if you've seen the film The Big Short.
Just got to think now. Probably not, actually.
Okay. Well, it basically tells you exactly what happened in 2008 with the crash.
Yeah.
Thing is, I found out exactly the same thing as all these people who managed to make money out of the thing. I found out, you know, exactly how it's going to all fall apart. but I didn't have a hedge fund behind me, so I couldn't really do anything. But I knew that it was all going to fall apart, and so I started. I think one of my first videos was explaining what was going to happen with the monetary system. So I found that people kind of connected more with a video with somebody actually speaking about it.
Yes.
So I think I did my first talk in America, which was very successful. So I thought got to get over this fear of public speaking and start giving talks.
And you've kind of gone on touring around. I mean, you go for it, don't you? You don't stop.
Oh, I nearly killed myself last year. I think I did 130 talks in 5 months.
Blimey.
Which it's too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, this year I've cut it down a bit.
So I suppose it begs the question: what do you do in your time, your downtime, in your time off?
Well, right now, because I've got some time off now, I'm trying to get back into writing. I've got 3 books that I've started writing,
right, and
I haven't had time to finish, so I've been trying to get back into them.
And are they sort of lawful books?
Well, one of them is about common law.
Yeah.
One of them is about the Old Testament, what's the truth behind the Old Testament, and the third one is about the fourth dimension.
And that's the main essence of the subject that we're going to talk to today. So let's get into the fourth dimension. So in this journey that I've been going on, which is now about 18, 19 months, something like that, a lot of this talk about, we're ascending. We're coming up from from 3D to 5D. And I go, hang on, what happened to 4D then? Where did that vanish? And everyone's a bit sort of cagey about it, as if it's like, oh no, you don't need to worry about that. You just hurdle up to the next one. And you think, well, there must be something in there. So maybe you could explain what's happening in that area, or if that is related to the same thing.
Well, I have a problem with people who start talking about the fifth dimension.
Right.
Because just working it out myself, I've got a kind of tenuous grasp on the fourth dimension, right? And I can't even imagine what the fifth could possibly be.
Right.
So whenever I encounter somebody who says, "Oh yeah, about the fifth dimension," I say, "Well, what is the fifth dimension? How would you conceptualize it for me? So make me understand what it is." And they can't. Right? So how can they talk about the fifth dimension if they don't know what it is?
Right, because we're all supposed to be ascending to this.
And that's another question. How do you ascend to this new dimension?
Exactly, because I mean, the way I first heard about it's like, you're going to have lighter bodies, or you'll be more telepathic, or you'll be this. And I go, well, actually, I quite like having sometimes a heavy body digging and doing something manual. I get a lot of pleasure out of exhausting myself and then sitting back and feeling that sense of achievement. And if we're now all floaty, fluffing about, it's like, well, you're actually taking away some of the enjoyment of life from me.
Exactly.
So
I in my talk, I basically show how to extrapolate what the fourth dimension is by looking. Well, okay, if you realise that this world is self-similar at all levels, as above, so below. Yeah. You can extrapolate what the fourth dimension is by looking at the previous dimensions.
Oh, okay. So just take me through that then.
Okay.
Previous dimensions.
So imagine I've got a cube. I'm holding a cube.
Yeah.
Right? If I cut that cube in half and look at its cross section.
Yes.
Now I'm looking at a flat surface. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I take that flat surface, cut it in half, and look at its cross section, now I'm looking at a line.
Yes.
If I cut that line in half, look at its cross section, I'm now looking at a point.
Yes.
So I've gone down from 3 dimensions down to 0.
Which is just a sort of a
just
point.
a point.
Yeah.
So a line is essentially an infinite number of points all strung together into one thing going off in a direction.
Right.
So a flat plane is an infinite number of lines all merged together into one thing, right, going off into a different direction.
Right.
A cube is an infinite number of flat planes all merged together into one thing going off into another direction.
So here comes the killer then.
So the fourth dimension necessarily must be a whole bunch of cubes all strung together into one thing going off into another direction. What do you think the other direction might be?
This is a trick question.
No.
Well, space. or
No.
time?
Time.
Time, of course.
Because-
Sorry, I don't know why I was
because
having a moment there.
This glass
Yes.
didn't just poof into existence.
No.
It had a timeline.
Right.
Right, so a better example I give in my talk is if you imagine a wooden chair.
Yes.
Okay, so that wooden chair is a three-dimensional representation of a four-dimensional object. So a three-dimensional slice of that four-dimensional object.
And by that do you mean that at one time it was a tree?
Well, that's where I'm going, because a fourth-dimensional representation of that chair is a flash of light.
Yeah.
That probably emanated from the sun, right? Absorbed by a leaf, which turned it into wood as the tree grew.
Yes.
Then the tree got cut down, right? Turned into lumber.
Yeah.
And somebody had an idea for a chair, turn that lumber into a chair, and that's what we interact with.
Yes.
Maybe for 20 years or so. Eventually, that chair breaks, ends up in a landfill. It breaks down into liquid, right? And that liquid breaks down into a gas. And maybe that gas ignites and becomes a flash of light again. So that's the whole timeline of that tree, all merged together into one thing, all happening all at once in the fourth dimension.
Right. So, because yes, I've heard about these times where it's kind of all collapsing, it's all together,
And it's
all now.
All space is in one place, and all time is happening all at once.
Right.
So the whole of reality is like that. So if you imagine the whole of reality is every moment is a static frame of reality, yeah?
Yeah.
And then the next frame comes along and it's slightly moved and so on.
Like
and
in
so
a
on.
flip book.
Like in a flip book,
Yeah.
So you've got infinite number of these frames of 3D reality, all merged together in one thing, all happening all at once.
Gosh.
Right? And that is an object in the fourth dimension.
So is that like a flip book or a roll of film? If you have a roll of film, you've got the whole of that timeline on that film in a canister in
Yes.
one place.
And if you imagine every frame of that film is actually a 3D
Version.
diorama.
Yes.
Yeah? And that's it. It's all there. But instead of all as a film reel, but it's all happening. Every frame is being exposed all at once.
Right.
So in the fourth dimension, this object, the whole of time and space, all happening all at once, is available, right? And we have access to that fourth dimension. We exist in both the third dimension and the fourth at the same time.
Right. Yes.
Because we have two hemispheres of the brain. The left hemisphere is what roots us here in the third dimension, right? Because all our senses are connected to it. So it tells us what this present moment, here and now, is like, what it smells like, what it looks like, what it sounds like, everything.
Touches like.
Yeah, so that roots us here in the third dimension. The right-hand side of our brain isn't rooted here, it's in the fourth dimension. And you use a totally different set of senses and a totally different type of thinking. Right? So the left brain, you're thinking kind of logical step-by-step processes, so you analyze things and you categorize things and that sort of thing. In the right brain, you feel and intuit and know, right?
Right.
That sort of thing. So and also you create with the right hand side of the brain. You're not creating the right hand side of the brain, you're actually creating in the fourth dimension.
Right. Okay.
Right. So in the fourth dimension, every idea, every thought, right, is an action. The reaction happens here, in the third dimension.
So are you saying that in the fourth dimension, any possibility that could happen has already happened?
Yes, in a way.
In a way.
Yes.
Because if you're in the third dimension and you're thinking about making that chair, but you haven't yet made it, but potentially in your timeline you have already made it.
Yes.
But it may be that at the last minute on this third dimension you'd go, I know I'm going to make a chair because it's a bit complicated. I'll make a table. But your fourth dimension already knew that because the time had already happened.
No. Okay, so the thing is, as soon as you conceive something, you have an idea for something, there's a probability now that it's going to appear in the third dimension.
Right.
And it's going to be a high probability, like almost 100%, right? but the probability that you made it may not be the same.
Oh, I see.
Right, because what happened to me was back in 1991, I was fascinated with two-seater sports cars, right? But at the time, nobody was making one, so I decided to build a two-seater sports car.
Wow!
Right, so I drew up this car and I made a 1/5 scale model of my car. Okay, my friends called it Project Dog Shit. Right?
That's nice.
Yeah, that's what mates do, isn't it? Yeah. You know? But they called it that, and I made this car, right?
Yeah.
And, I was going to build it on a Volkswagen Beetle body and a sort of chassis and whatever. But then I had my daughter, and it became too expensive a hobby.
Yes.
The married men will know what I'm talking about. Right?
Yes, we know that. You've got all other responsibilities and things, and all of that caper.
So 7 years later on,
Right.
I'm walking down a street in New York. I look down, and there's my car. In absolute detail, the car that I built, a little model I built, right, the car was sitting right there. It was a Mazda MX-5. Right.
For those people who know what a Mazda MX, I mean, I'm useless with cars. But,
There's a little red sports car, exactly the same thing I built.
So what goes through your mind then when that happens? Do you think some bastards nicked my idea?
At the time, that was my thing. Like, how did somebody somebody must have grabbed my model but what I realise now is that when I conceived the idea,
yes,
it was created. It became a probability in the future, right? And I didn't pick it up and make it, but somebody else did.
Right. Okay.
And this is exactly the same model, but from a different viewpoint. Or because it already existed in the future, I saw it there.
Right.
That's what I saw when I started to build my car.
Yes.
And so did the guy called Tom Matano at Mazda. He saw the same thing, and so he went ahead and built it.
See that makes a lot of sense to me. That you're thinking in a way of something, but actually it may already exist, and you're tapping into something that is part of you.
But remember, there's no time, right?
No.
So the moment you conceive of something,
Yes.
it already exists in the future. So then you see it, and
Yes.
if you ever watched Star Trek: The Voyage Home, right? Scotty ends up going into the past, right? And he teaches somebody the formula for transparent aluminium that he learned at school. So he teaches somebody about it, and they said, well, aren't you changing the timeline? And he said, well, what if he invented it?
Oh,
Well, if that guy invented it because he got the formula from Scotty, who learned it at school, from the one who invented it, where did the information come from?
Yeah.
The information came from, because as soon as you conceive of the idea, there now exists, because the mind stuff that we live in is infinite possibility. Anything can happen. As long as you can conceive it, it can happen.
So does this go into that business of manifestation, and where people because when I was 18, there were loads of these books about Think and Grow Rich and minds. I'm just trying to think some of the titles. Bring out the magic in the mind.
Law of
attraction, visualization, and all this sort of stuff. And it was very popular. And I do remember at the time thinking, great, I'll visualize these things. And of course, nothing worked, as Cat Weasel used to say. Nothing works. And so I got very disillusioned with this whole thing, because things weren't doing this manifestation. I forgot all about that, got on with life, what have you. And then we come back, and now we hear a lot of these sort of conscious people, as they like to call themselves, talking about manifestation and fixing on things and all of this kind of stuff. And so it seems to me that people have been writing about this for years. There's got to be something in it, because it can't be the con that I used to think it was. Oh, it's just, here's how to get rich quick, folks. Write a book on how to get rich quick, and people buy it. So is this the area that we get into from a practical point of view for people?
Well, it is, because all those books came about for exactly the reason you just explained. That you read them, you got excited by it, it didn't work, so you went, bah, forget it. Yeah,
right.
That's what it was there for, right? Because they get these books give you some of the idea, yeah, but not actually the true method of actually how to make it happen. Because you've been doing it all your life, and you probably don't realise it. You know,
right?
Those times that you said, "Oh, what a coincidence," or "Oh, that was lucky, wasn't it?"
Yes.
Or "I was just thinking of you when you just phoned." You know.
Yes.
You know, you're doing it all the time inadvertently.
So does that run alongside the things that happen? You're not saying that everything that you create, you've created, because there's obviously a lot of things in life that you don't create. I never created the WEF, for example, and it seems that they're there. I would like to uncreate that, and if I could just make that happen, that would be, save everyone's bloody problems, wouldn't it? And all the other McNasties that live out there.
Well, I say to people that we live in a playground. Right? It's a wonderful playground, except that at this moment the bullies have taken over the playground,
right?
And they're making us play their game, right? So, yeah, it's unpleasant at the moment, but when the WEF has been around for decades, yeah, but before they actually gained enough power. Well, that made no difference to us. We did our thing. Yeah. They were still there doing their thing, right? But we weren't conscious of them.
No.
And now we're conscious of them, and we're feeling and now we're focusing on what they want to have happen.
Right.
They're using our abilities against us. They're using our attention. Well, they focus our attention with 9/11.
Yes.
Focus the whole world's attention on this one event, right, to bring in the security state, because we all started thinking of security.
Yes.
Yes. And so we helped to bring in that security state for them. I believe that this bloodline do not have the abilities that we have.
It's funny you should say that, because I also feel that, and I've been saying that in the and I don't know where all this. I mean, as I completely admit, I am new to all of this after sort of 18 months of doing all this. But there are certain things in me that have clearly opened up, and I don't fully understand it. But exactly what you said there about these people, I don't think they can create or manifest or do certain. They're not creative, and which is why they need us. And I think we forget that. We downplay our skills and their importance, and actually it's the other way around. It's like everything, it's so inverted.
Sure. And what they've done, they've actually put a lot of things in place to suppress these abilities. One of them is school. Right, so there was a guy called Dr. John Land, I believe it was. He was commissioned by NASA to find out, how to hire more geniuses. Right. So he was tasked to find out, who the geniuses were. So he gave a creative intelligence test to a group of 5-year-olds. So what sort of percentage of those 5-year-olds do you think were genius level?
Now, I know this because you've mentioned this on The Lawful Remedy, but let's pretend I don't. I mean, you might think, the average person might go, cool, geniuses are quite rare, so maybe 20% of that group?
Right, it was 98%.
Which is staggering.
Staggering. Well, they're 5-year-olds, so imagine before 5, they were probably at 100% geniuses.
Yes.
Not probably, I think they were. We're all 100% geniuses. And even by 5 years old, they started working on us.
Now, it's what I've said this to other people as well. It's funny you should say this. At a 5-year-old, and you see kids and parents sort of being, "Don't be stupid, don't be this" to their kids, and I think to myself, hold on a second. In 5 years, that kid has learnt to walk. He's learnt a language. He's learnt to recognise and label things. He's found his personality. He's got a sense of humour. He's able to answer back. He's able to sort of wind you up. You know, if that isn't a genius in 5 years, then tell me what isn't. And I just think people don't realise how much that little tiny brain and had to grow and sort of in a world where everyone's telling you what to bloody do all the time.
Well, that child has also questioned rubbish.
Yes.
You know, because a child. I've got to stop saying kid. A child asking the question why.
Yes.
Is actually that child going, this doesn't make sense. Explain it to me.
Yes.
Right? It's like, the child says, you say to the child, oh, the sky is blue. What's blue?
Yes.
Well, it sounds like...
And why is it blue?
Yeah, why is it blue? So, that might sound a silly question, what's blue, right? But when you really think about it, blue is an abstract concept. Yes. Right? It's a frequency of light, right? Which is an abstract concept.
Yes.
Yes, it can be useful to know the difference between, but you can automatically see the difference between different frequencies. So, labeling it with an abstract concept is confusing. Why?
Yes.
But I know that this goes into very technical, but yeah, it's. I mentioned in the talk that by the age of about 6 or 7, our whole reality is papered over with these words, and we interact with the words and not the reality. So a child, if anyone's taken a toddler 100 yards down the road, it takes them like 2 hours to do it.
Yes.
Because that child's like, oh, shiny, oh, what's that? Because that childlike wonder of everything around.
Which is like a dog as well. A dog is looking and smelling and then is excited about things. And we've dulled ourselves down by going, yeah, we've seen all this.
Yeah, because what we do is replace those things with words.
Right.
Yeah.
You
say, it's a bird, a hummingbird is like them, doing all this thing. What's that? Bird. So now it's this amorphous bird shape, which doesn't capture the wonder of it. And now, your whole world's papered over all these words. And that's it, you interact with the words instead. Yes. Right?
They're all like shortcuts with the emotion and the excitement removed.
Yeah. They're just labels.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'll explain to you what happened to me early when I was pondering this idea. I was trying to figure out how to get the idea across better, and I was looking down at my screen, and I glanced up through the window absent-mindedly, and the words green bush came into my head, because obviously that's what I was kind of seeing. And I looked down to my computer again, and I heard the voice go, is it? So I was like, I looked up again and thought, oh, there's a red patch in that bush, some red leaves in there. And I thought, so I got up and I had a look at this bush, and I realised, oh, it's actually a whole load of bushes all intertwined, different species. And as I watched, I could see a bird fly into the bush. I thought, oh, there's a nest in there. And then a different bird, different species, flew into another part of the bush. Oh, there's more than one nest in there. And then I saw some field mice wandering around at the bottom, and I thought, this is a whole ecosystem, a whole community. I was standing there for about 15 minutes just marvelling at this bush. Right? But I might have missed it because all my mind said was green bush. And I immediately ignored it, ignored the wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what's happened to us. We've also, as I found out, I'm not sure if I was allowed to say this, but Rudolf Steiner said a way will eventually be found to vaccinate bodies so that the inclination towards spiritual ideas will not develop.
Oh, really?
And all their lives, people will see the world only in terms of, the 3D physical world.
And that's really interesting, because if you go out in the world today and you look at people's sense of being alive in this amazing place has disappeared. I mean, especially in recent time. I mean, I know we've all got bills to pay and there's a lot of oppression, but it does. Somebody said this to me the other day. He said it's almost as if the soul has been removed from people, which is a really frightening thing to think of.
Yeah. So school as well. I mean, do you remember doing drama at school?
Yes.
And maybe cookery,
Yes.
metalwork,
Yeah.
woodwork.
I used to love all those things.
Right.
Yeah.
They were creative things where you would use your creative intelligence
Yes.
to come up with new things. Yeah. Do you think they're doing that at school now?
Well, I haven't been at school for a
No,
long
but-
time, I admit, but I don't think so. I mean, judging from when my kids were at school, which was about 15 years ago now, no.
No, all the things that might stimulate the right hand side of your brain have been removed, or they've turned those creative processes into left brain step by step processes. Like instead of art, it's like painting by numbers now,
Right.
which is a logical. Okay, I see a 3 there, and 3 there, and you put that colour in there. Right, it's a step by step process.
So the sort of Haynes manual of art.
Yes, so you've removed the creativity from it. So they've done that with, if they're still doing any of these subjects, they've done that to it. So
Right.
no creativity remains.
Yeah.
They don't want to stimulate the right side of your brain.
And I wonder if that is then why there's so many people at the moment, I say so many people, in our age group, who are the ones that are aware of the various things going on, because it does seem to be a lot of people, or all the people who are awake or aware, however you want to express it, are the ones who were born in the 60s and 70s, from that sort of era, back in the analog days. And people like my son, my oldest son, who's incredibly clever, and yet, here's the thing, when, for example, I took him to south of Wales and we were walking along the coastline, very beautiful cliffs and the sea crashing in, and I was just overwhelmed by the absolute stunning beauty of this. And I said to Stanley, who at the time must have been in his early 20s, about 23, something like that, so it was about 10 years ago, and I said, look at that. And he said, yes, it's interesting, Dad, but I'm trying to think how I would recreate that in a computer game. And I thought, never mind that. Just look at it. Isn't it just beautiful? I mean, you could not create that out of. He said, well, technically you could do this. And so his sense of beauty came from but in a very ones and zeros sort of way.
A left brain sort of approach.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's a good example that looking at something and seeing it from a left brain perspective rather than a right brain. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, this makes me feel amazing, uplifted, or whatever. Yeah. So it's more like, this is interesting. If I put this colour here and put these pixels here, I can
Absolutely. And how do you then reprogram people? Not reprogram, perhaps that's program, bad word. But how do you get them to be inspired by more left brain?
I mean, more right brain.
Sorry. Yeah, we don't want a more right. Yes, I'm getting bloody confused now. Yes, more right brain. How do we make them more creative?
First of all, get them all away from the trappings of this system. Right? Maybe out into the country, and like your son, try and get him out of that thinking of how to recreate this. But sorry, son, look at this.
Yes.
Look at it. What does it make you feel like? Get in touch with, what feelings you have, what inspiration, what I know, all the right brain sort of thing. How are you visualizing this? How's it make you feel? What emotions are going through you? That sort of thing, rather than what is the Pantone colour of this leaf?
Pantone 304 or something.
Yeah.
Now this is interesting because as I got into my 30s, I was noticing that younger people were doing this bucket list thing, where they were taking all these experiences but wanting to tick them off a list. And it's never been something I ever thought I would do, a bucket list, as if, I need to achieve all these things, because just walking down the road or in the countryside, there can be something which is so beautiful and wonderful. You'd never dream of putting it on a bucket list. And yet it does seem, based on exactly what you said, it's just like tweaked a cog in my head, that people are going, this is how you have an experience. That it's got to be, I jumped from a thing on a bungee rope, And okay, I've done that now. I've had the experience, and yet it's not been a real experience.
No, because it's just like it's like like a video game, isn't it? It's like, okay, I get to this level and I have to do this.
Yeah.
Right, I've done it. Right, I've got past that level, got past that boss. You know.
Yeah.
It's not actually appreciating the experience and actually fully experiencing it.
That is really, I mean, that is an eye-opener thing. That is amazing. So let's go back to the fourth dimension and talking about, you conceive an idea. So people, of course, will be going, well, how does this manifestation business work then? And have you proved it yourself?
I've proved it so many times. It's unbelievable. Now that I look back on my life, in my talk, I give like this continuous sort of process, starting in my 20s when I essentially saw my future in terms of films and TV that I'd watched. Right, so I wanted to be a computer programmer because I watched Tron.
Right,
remember that film Tron?
Yeah.
And I wanted to live in America, Coming to America. Yeah. I loved Magnum PI when I was when I was growing up, and later on, I fell in love with this TV series called London's Burning about firemen, because I had that boyish thing about wanting to be a fireman. Yeah.
Just as a side, I did an day's extra work on London's Burning. I don't remember much about it, but I remember being on location where something was happening, fire engine and all that nonsense.
Right. Well, so I wanted to be a computer programmer. Before that, I wanted to go to America. So I went to the American Embassy or something like that and asked, how do I get to live in America? And the guy said, have you got any money? I said, no. Have you got any special skills? No. Have you got a degree? No. And he was asking me all these questions. And I was like, no. He went, sorry, you can't get to live in America. I was like, okay. So I thought, I want to be a computer programmer.
Yeah.
So I went to the biggest company at the time that was doing that sort of thing, which was BT. And I found two jobs. Right, one was a senior manager level programmer's job, which I had no hope of getting because you needed a degree and you needed this, that, and the other. And I had a help desk worker. I thought, well, if I take that job, I can work my way up to it. So I looked at the manager job. I thought, I really want that one, but okay,
more money as well.
Yeah, way more money. But I thought, okay, I'll go for the help desk. So they were having this job fair in this big building, and there was one side of the building was for the lower level ones, and the other side was for the higher level ones. So I went along, and I went to the wrong side.
Not knowing. I
just walked in. I thought I was on the right side. I walked in, and the guy said at the desk, he said, "Can I see your CV?" And at the time, I'd written a program that was my CV, and it was like a book, and you open it up and you click on things and you go to pages and what have you. And so he started playing with that, and he was like, "Wow!" He never even asked me a question. He said, "When can you start?" So I started at this place. It was
Did you still know that you were not?
No. So I started at this place, the Research and Development Laboratories in Martlesham Heath, right? Big, prestigious place. I think it's about 4,000 people there, and I'm the only one who didn't have a degree.
Right, gosh.
So I'm working there, and 2 weeks into it, I realised I'm not on the help desk. I got the managerial job, and I didn't even know it.
Oh, that's amazing.
Right, so I'm now a programmer. Right?
Yeah.
So within a year, I got a promotion. Right? Another part of BT. And my manager said, no, I'm going to block this because I don't want people poaching my staff. Right. So I was so annoyed that I thought, right, I'm going to apply for all these jobs and put them on my desk so my manager will see them and it will piss him off.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what I did. I just applied for any old jobs, right, and put them on my desk. My manager couldn't block my promotion. So I started this really great job in another part of BT. About a month later, I got a phone call. Hello, Dave, you've got that job in New York. I was like, what job in New York? One of the jobs that I'd applied for, just for fun. Right? I got the job in New York, and so they flew me over. They organised, all the paperwork and stuff.
Wow.
And I ended up living in America for 15 years.
Gosh.
Now, to decide where we're going to live, I stuck a pin in the map.
Right.
And the town that it landed in, turns out it's the only town in the area that had a volunteer fire department. So I joined the fire department. I became a fireman. Yeah. So London's burning.
Yeah.
So in fire academy, right, everyone gets a nickname. So they gave me the nickname, and I don't know how, they gave me the nickname Magnum.
Ha! Magnum PI.
Well, to be honest, I think it's more of the chalk ice, but
Well, I know.
but they called me Magnum nonetheless.
Yeah.
And within a year, when I started out, I got my Ferrari. So I got to live Magnum.
Yeah. Gosh.
So literally all those things that were
Yes.
that were part of my sort of dreamscape at the time when I was in my sort of early 20s, came true in my 30s.
So that's really interesting, because you weren't really aware of those things. You'd planted all the seeds, and then life was just dishing them up to you, and you're going, oh wow, look at this. And were you aware that you had, Magnum and the various things, or is it only looking back you go, oh, these things happen?
Only looking back, because
Right.
at the time it was, what a coincidence.
Yeah.
Oh, how
Okay.
does that happen? I must be so lucky.
Yes. So if you're looking back and you're thinking, actually, I'm not allegedly Dave. I don't have the Ferrari. I haven't got this nice job. These things have not worked on me. What's going on? And you want to get out of the situation that you're in. The sort of new wave people are saying, oh yeah, well actually pick what you want and focus on it, and you can manifest it. So is that true? And B, if that is so, how do you do that?
Well, it is true, but there are a number of barriers that have been put in our way to stop us doing it.
Right.
One of them is ingrained expectations. Right. So, let's imagine this scenario. Imagine I've got a plank of wood, right, 10 feet long and about that wide, and I've got it on the floor here.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think you could walk across that plank of wood?
Yes.
Yes, easily. You
Yes.
probably can do it backwards. You probably hop across it, blindfold, walk.
Yeah.
Right.
Unicycle.
Unicycle across it. Yeah. But no problems whatsoever. But if I took that plank of wood and put it 200 foot in the air between two buildings, could you do it now?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not. Probably not without a safety net, and even then, I may fall off a few times.
Right. Well, no safety net between two buildings. I had somebody who said, yes, I could do it. But then he said, oh, if there's a gust of wind, no, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
But if that same gust of wind happened when he was walking on the ground, it wouldn't affect him.
No.
But it's just the idea of being up there, right? Your imagination is stronger than your desire. So as you desire, you want something to happen in your life, you might have a contrary view, right, seated in the back of your imagination that, if you got that, it would be bad. Money is a good example, because we all think we want money, but we've in the back of our heads, we think money is evil. Money is the root of all evil.
Right.
Multimillionaires aren't nice people. We've got this idea that money is bad.
Yes.
So when you consciously say, I want money, there's a bigger part of you saying, you don't.
Right, because you're contradicting. Oh, I see. And this is that business with the cube, which is your conscious bit, and the much bigger cubes, fourth dimensional cubes.
Oh no! I was telling you earlier, but that if you imagine this table, you can't see the table, but the screen,
Yeah.
the screen, right, is your full awareness. While the tiny pixel right in the corner is your conscious awareness. The rest of it is your subconscious awareness.
Right.
So your subconscious says, no, you don't. When your conscious mind is going, oh, I want money. No, you don't.
Which
is going to win.
Because you've been programmed into
Because you've been programmed.
I mean, this is something that I'm just trying to remember his name. Doctor, he's been everywhere. Bruce Lipton, yes, talks about, and he's sort of discovered it from looking at the cell structure in the body, or whatever it was, and saying actually your thoughts and intentions can change the I'm trying to remember now. Not genomes. What is it? The
DNA. I
it's
know.
kind of, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
The things in your body that they say your genes.
Genes, yeah.
Your genes, because they used to say, oh no, you're born with these genes. They are what they are.
Yeah,
It's
saddle with them.
Yeah, sadly, exactly. But he's saying, actually, having studied them, genes are genes, and they don't come with anything. But your mind is the thing. So if you say to them, these genes are for making your hands open and shut, that's fine. These genes, but there's no real difference to the genes as such, other than what you add to it. So in other words, when you look at it in the outer world, if you're putting your own limitations on things, that's the blocks that you're putting. But you're not aware of those limitations, because when you're young, you've had all this programming, as he calls it, because as you grow up, your parents have said, don't touch that, don't do this, or you can't have that, or we're poor, or all of those things. And although you go, I'm focusing on being rich, there's still in the back of your mind, actually, this family has never been rich and will never be rich.
Yeah. But the truth is, if you imagine a cell in your hand, okay, well, if you took that cell out and put it in a petri dish, that cell will live as an independent, living organism that thinks it's you, right? Okay, and if you put some good stuff over here and bad stuff over there, it will keep away from the bad stuff and go towards good stuff.
Yes.
Right? If that cell in your hand, right, suddenly decides, I need salt, and there's no salt here. If I don't get salt, I'm going to die. Where's the salt? Where's the salt? Where's the salt? Eventually, that's going to percolate up to you, and you might go, I fancy anchovies tonight. And then that cell's like, oh, what a coincidence. I really wanted salt, and all this salt appeared. How does that happen?
Yes.
Well, because that cell is part of a larger body, right? And that when that cell wants something or needs something, the body's going to provide it. It has to.
It has to.
Well, we are all cells of a larger body.
Right.
This system is a living system, and when we need something, the body is going to respond.
So, well, how about that? That's. This is very, very interesting, but it's also encouraging, because it makes people have a much more, I'm going to say positive outlook, but it enriches your life, because we have been trained to think that we are not able to have the things that we want, or to play in the playground, as you put it earlier, to enjoy life. And it really upsets me when, and I've always had this thought, we've got this one chance in this life, or at least in this iteration, whatever you want to call it, and we should be enjoying it. But there's so many people with miserable faces, and they're going around and going, oh, it's Monday morning, it's 9 o'clock, and all of that. And all my life, I've gone, well, I don't want to do this job, so I'm not doing it. And I used to juggle and unicycle and lie on a bed of nails. And people would say, oh, you've got such an amazing job. And I said, well, I actually enjoy doing this. And that's why I wanted to do it. And now I'm doing it. I mean, I didn't choose doing what I'm doing on YouTube, particularly what I'm doing. But again, if I wanted to stop doing it, I'd stop straight away. I mean, I get to meet people like yourself and many of the other wonderful guests, and they all bring something to the show, and I'm learning. And all the time I'm learning and enjoying it, why would I not stay at the party? Yeah, as it were.
Well, I'm lucky enough to have been shown what my purpose here on Earth is.
Wow. Okay.
It was a friend of mine, Gabor, who he did this little process on me. He got me to lie down and imagine an atmospheric place. So I imagined a teepee, sort of a fire in the middle and logs around the fire, and he got me to describe it in detail. So I'm describing it to him, and he interrupts me and goes, "Somebody's come in. Who is it?" All of a sudden I had a picture in my head of a friend of mine dressed as an Indian medicine woman, and so she came in and she sat opposite me, opposite the fire, and Gabor said, "Ask her whatever you want." So I asked her what my purpose here was, and without missing a beat, she said, "To help and inspire by just being you." I thought, I can do that. I know how to be me.
Well, as you say that, a lot of people don't know how to be them.
Well, yeah, that's the trick though. But here's the thing, I think I got gypped, because I think that's everybody's purpose.
Well, as soon as you said that, I thought, well, that sounds very similar to mine, to be ourselves.
Yes, because every one of us is unique.
Yes.
Every one of us, the unique part of us is the fact that only you will see through your eyes here and now.
Yes.
You're the only one with that perspective on the world, right? So that means you can think things that nobody else will ever think, or say something that nobody else will ever say.
That is, and what's profound there for me is that growing up, I always wanted to do comedy, be on telly. I'm glad I'm not in mainstream media now, but let's not go down that road. And that kind of thing. And I had, as we all would have, perhaps heroes that we would like. So there would be people like, I don't know, off the top of my head, Terry Thomas and Norman Wisdom, Laurel and Hardy. And you go, oh, I'd love to be them. I'd love to have that life. I'd love to be them. And then in the entertainment world, I met lookalikes. So I'd meet a David Jason lookalike and Marilyn Monroe and a Lady Diana lookalike and all these sort of people. And I thought, yeah, they are doing that, but they're not them. And I wouldn't want to be a lookalike. Actually, I want to be me that in my own way does the thing, not somebody else's way. So what you just said there, being yourself. Of course, back in those days, there's a bit more ego around. And now it seems to me that shedding the ego, you need a little bit to be able to sort of do certain things. Like I couldn't do this show without having some ego, but it's not to sort of go, hey, I'm the big thing and look at me. But having that unique life to do the sort of things other people might have done, but to do it in a completely different way, in your own way. And as you say, looking through your eyes, because nobody can look. I've only got one eye, so I've got to make the most of it.
But you saw Lauren Hardy and Norman Wisdom and that.
Yeah.
But you weren't being Lauren Hardy and being Norman.
No.
You liked what they did.
Yes.
And you did it your way instead.
Yes.
Right, which is you helping and inspiring people by being you.
Yes, that's
right?
true.
And this whole system is here to stop you from being you. Right? It's to get you into the hive mind so that you think like everybody else thinks. And, you're afraid of being you. And that's actually there's a quote, the opposite of courage is not cowardice, it's conformity. It's being afraid of being you. That
is really interesting. So, I mean, when you get things like, I remember the Harry Potter craze, everybody's going to see it, everybody's, the hype or something. And I wasn't the slightest interested at all. And I've always found these things where people say, go and do this. And I'm thinking, well, you can go and do it. I'm just, why? Why? Because I want to do this. So, no, it's all good fun over here. Well, actually, but that's been my life, has been, somebody who's always not with the crowd.
Isn't that always the way that, looking back in our lives, those people who were thought of as the misfits were the ones who got it right?
Yeah.
The naughty kids were the actual ones who were doing the right thing. Us, accepting indoctrination, we're actually doing the wrong thing. It's crazy.
It's a crazy thing. Well, listen, we're coming up. I'm just looking at the clock there, almost at the end of our hour.
I hardly even talked about the fourth dimension.
Well, we've still got a couple of minutes left, so
cram it into the 2 minutes.
Yeah, cram it in. To round up our. You're very welcome back, Dave. That's the thing. You're very welcome back. We can talk about all sorts of stuff. But to round up this conversation, what would you add?
I would say that we have the ability and the natural ability to shape our experience here any way that we want it. Now we're doing it inadvertently. Right? A lot of people have manifested a car parking space consciously.
Oh yeah.
I want this to happen. Oh, hello, Julia.
The lovely Julia has just suddenly arrived. Hello, Julia. Do come in and say hello.
Hiya.
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm fabulous, thank
so
you.
good to see you.
And likewise.
We're just rounding up the show.
Oh, hi everyone.
So we'll do that, and then we can all have a nice cup of tea or something. But yeah, how fortuitous. So, funny enough, Dave was just saying something that we've tried to do about manifesting a car parking space.
Yeah.
Have you ever done it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
I do it all the time.
It absolutely works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Well,
Mostly.
well, I figured out how it actually works. Right.
Sit down.
Have you ever heard of Schrodinger's cat?
Yes.
Right. So Schrodinger's cat is a thought experiment where you've got a box, and in that box you've got a vial of poison and a trigger mechanism that may or may not work. Right. You don't know.
Yeah.
Right? If you put a cat in a box, put the lid on it, well, the cat is in a state of both being alive and dead at the same time. Okay.
Yes.
Because you don't know if that thing's triggered. Right. You only figure out the truth. Right. It only resolves down into one or the other when you open the box.
Yes.
Okay.
Of course.
So, throughout your life, you have Schrodinger's cat moments. Every time you make a decision, that moment before you actually decide, it can go either way. It's actually both are true until you go, this one, right? So you have all these moments that have no real effect on your life. Okay, so imagine me and you are going to Tesco's, right?
Yes.
And early in the day, your Schrodinger's cat moment is, what shall I have for breakfast, cereal or a banana? And under normal circumstances, you have cereal.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have your cereal. You get down to Tesco's. I turn up at Tesco's. You're in the space that I'd want, right? But I have to go and find another one. If I make a change now, if I say, you know what, I want that car parking space. The moment I ask for that car parking space, that Schrodinger's cat moment is now altered. So you have a banana. Right? So now you leave the house 5 minutes early. So you leave Tesco's 5 minutes early, just as I arrive. Okay.
I see.
Now I didn't change that moment for you. You always chose the banana, right? Because again, in the fourth dimension, all time and space is happening all at once.
Yes.
So I didn't change it. It the moment I asked for it, that's what actually happened.
Gosh.
Right, so that you ended up leaving the car parking space, at the right time, right? So the ripples that caused are going to be very small, very tiny, because they, whether you have banana or cereal doesn't really make a difference to the world, does it? Right? I believe that the system has created technology now to actually do what we do naturally. I believe it's the quantum computer. If you listen to the guy, Geordie Rose, explain it, he talks about reaching into parallel universes and pulling information into our world to make an effect.
This is what they look like. There are two of them. These are from our lab in Burnaby in British Columbia. From the outside, they look like giant black monoliths, big metal boxes, about 10 feet on a side, 12 feet tall. And they are powered, they have a fridge inside them, a refrigerator that cools these chips to almost absolute zero. At the heart of this big box is a tiny chip about the size of your thumbnail. I'm not going to describe in any mathematical detail how it all works, but let me give you an analogy. In quantum mechanics, there's this concept that a thing can exist in two states which are mutually exclusive at the same time. Imagine that there really are parallel universes out there, and now imagine you have two that are exactly identical in every respect, all the way out to the horizon as far as we can see, down to the last little atomic detail of every single thing, with only one difference. And that's the value of a little thing called a qubit on this chip, which is a contraction of quantum bit. And that qubit is very much like a bit or a transistor in a conventional computer. It has two distinct physical states, which we call 0 and 1 for bit. In a conventional computer, these are mutually exclusive. That device is either one or the other, and never anything else. In a quantum computer, that device can be in this strange situation where these two parallel universes have a nexus, a point in space where they overlap. And if we're smart enough, we can dive into them and grab their resources and pull them back into ours to make an effect in our world.
I think what he's doing is collapsing a different probability, right? That means that in the past something different happens, and now a new timeline's happened in the world that we're in, right? So that explains the Mandela effect.
Oh, right. Now,
Right.
funny enough, I only recently learned what the Mandela effect was.
Right.
All this, the monopoly man with the monocle and all of this.
So, when we go in and we manifest a car parking space, we're going in with like a scalpel and surgically making a tiny little change, right? So there's really small ripples, nothing really gets affected. But they're using technology which isn't that precise, so it's like a blunderbuss going blam, blam, cutting big holes in the fabric of time and space. So the ripples are larger, so that because of what's happened, the guy who I don't know, designing the box and Monopoly, decides, oh no, I'm not going to put a monocle on him, and so that's what happened.
So some of us have that memory and some don't.
Because we're all recording our own version of reality. You're recording from your perspective, your universe at every moment.
Yes.
So from your perspective, your universe is like this, and everything you can perceive out the windows and stuff. Right? There's nothing else. That's your universe.
Yes.
And so you've recorded, what the Monopoly Man looked like, right? But now when time changes, well, your recording doesn't change to reflect it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So that's what I think is really happening.
Blimey, what did you make of that, Julia?
Well, it makes sense.
In
In a weird way.
Yeah.
As it all does.
Well, you just jumped into the middle of this.
Yeah,
So
yeah. There's a lot to go through,
I
but
still feel like I landed on my feet, though. I get it.
Yeah.
so listen. We've been talking for an hour. We must have you back if you're up for it.
Okay.
Downstairs, and the audience cannot see this, which is a shame, but another time, is an amazing motorized unicycle. I know when we very first spoke, you said, I share the same skill as you, I can ride a unicycle. And I said, oh really? And you said, yeah, but mine's a motorized unicycle. And Dave brought it with him today, but I'm afraid to say the audience sadly won't get to see it, but
I will.
yeah, there you go. Dave, thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, absolutely welcome.
An absolutely fascinating discussion. Fourth dimension. It'd be interesting to see what the comments are. Of course, is there anywhere that you're at fairly recently that people can come and see you? You said you're taking some time off.
Yeah, I'm going to the Sounds Beautiful Festival.
Aha! So we.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, see you there.
Yeah.
So
More long conversations, I dare say.
yeah, so I'm actually going to give the shortened version of the Fourth Dimension talk there, so you will get to see a bit of it.
Oh, brilliant!
There's only a few more talks left for me this year because, as I said, I nearly killed myself last time, so I'm not going to do that
Need
again.
a bit of time out, which would be great. And so Julia and I will be at the Sounds Beautiful festival in it's near Bournemouth, isn't it?
Wimborne.
It's Wimborne. That's right. Wonderful place. So that's it for today's episode. Julia was a little bonus coming in there at the end, but a huge thanks to Dave for coming in and coming to a real studio.
Yeah, I'm really impressed actually.
And I will be back with more monologues and more wonderful guests in the future. But until then, from the three of us, the lovely Julia, allegedly Dave, and I think myself, thanks very much and goodbye.